All right, everybody, welcome back. This is going to be lecture 5, so we're going to be talking about international law. It's going to be a pretty short one, and the next one will be very short. This is by Knut Treisbach. I love that name. I don't know why it sounds so weird coming off the American tongue. Knut. Okay, so international law. Section 1. There is a focus in the book and in the chapter as international law as a norms rather than concrete legal jurisdiction, right? So inside of a nation, you have mechanisms for enforcing laws. In the UN, you don't really, right? Sometimes they can get people to, like The Hague, the International Criminal Court, if they can get them extradited from their home country. But a lot of times this doesn't happen, right? The home country will hide them or protect them. Or think of someone like Putin, who has numerous ICJ rulings or charges against him in the world, or even like some of the leaders, like Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel, have um, some charges out there. Uh, will they ever see justice in front of the International Criminal Court? I doubt it. Like, I seriously doubt it. How is that ever going to happen? It would be an uproar if you tried to take them out of their country, and their own countries are like, you're not, you're the UN. We don't care about you. We'll deal with our own stuff, right? So I would say, and I agree with them, that these are more norms than real laws, right? But they also give this fun analogy between sort of the settlement that has no written laws and yet how they have these norms for settling conflicts and these norms about property rights and these norms about land parcelization and all these sorts of things, right? Even if it's not written down. And generally this is sort of how customs and laws come about anyway, right? It becomes this sort of social agreement. But I thought it was a really fun, like they say, states, just like households, hold the supreme and exclusive authority over their polity or their land, if we're talking about that settlement, and follow predominantly customary and contractual rules and the relations between them, but have no world government above them, right? And so, um, while the states actually control all of this stuff, and there really isn't, like, I don't know if you would call the UN a supranational entity. It's just suggestive, sort of. And yet, states find ways and reasons to follow those suggestions. All right. I'm going to skip section 2. We'll go straight to section 3 and just say, like, the chapter focuses on public international law. And they say that this is relations involving states, IGOs, and NGOs, which include individuals, NGOs, corporations, and which concerns conflicts of law that may arise in cases where domestic law of different states could apply, right? So, say there's uh, I don't know, corporate fraud that happens in both the United States and Mexico. They might have different laws, they might have different judicial systems, different ways of going about it. And so this can be a really good way for sort of the international law to step in. Look, Mexico and the US, you've both agreed to these sort of fraud laws in the UN. Will you allow us to adjudicate the situation? Right. So, okay. Section 3, from no world government to global governance. They ask first, how is international law made? And for the most part, I think they're right. It's about bilateral and multilateral treaties. Like, most of these agreements around the world are not based in the UN. They're based in NAFTA. They're based in Mercosur. They're based in ASEAN. They're based in, the US UK trade agreements. And so a lot of this stuff comes from treaties rather than some international organization. Okay, section 3B, global organizations, the UN era. Um, I would say the UN and the growing needs of modern society have led to all kinds of interesting branches of international law, from human rights to criminal law. A lot of, like, the law of the sea is based on the UN. Like, that's one place where they do have a little bit of power. piracy and things like that, drug trafficking, human trafficking, terrorism. You have economic law, so this covers tariffs and protectionism, tax havens, corporate structures of the international scene, internet protocols and privacy, these sorts of things, right? And while a lot of times these these aren't all that successful, sometimes I would point out that there are some really great successes. One of the things we're worried about in the modern times, right, is global warming or global climate change, whatever you want to call it. Well, we had a scare in the 80s and 90s that y'all probably didn't live through, but it was the ozone holes, right? We found out that this key ingredient, this key chemical in refrigeration processes at the time, called CFCs, chlorofluorocarbons, were actually combining with other gases in the air and eating through the ozone layers at the poles in the Arctic and the Antarctic. And that this was allowing vast amounts of radiation in from the sun that had usually been blocked out by the ozone, which was causing problems, increased cancer rates and warming and all sorts of things. But we fixed it. The international scene came together. They banned CFCs. They made new refrigeration products, and it's not a problem anymore. And so this is the sort of thing where I say, a lot of people are very skeptical of these international organizations, as am I, honestly. But they can work. So I like to point out the successes when there are some. Okay. The final section, section 4, the functioning of international law. It's funny. I'll read you this quote here in a minute, but it reminds me of like virality. Like we talk about memes and stuff now. And so they say the emergence of a norm and its influence start long before such a norm is codified in a treaty. It's based on a normative life cycle that relies on a transnational social process, which is characterized by initial norm emergence, right? Followed by early adoption of the norm, the spreading of its acceptance, and ultimately widespread internalization of the norm and then compliance with it, right? So this again reminds me a little bit of the U.S. system, where like the states are experiments of democracy, and you'll have, you know 30 to 50 different ways of approaching a problem. Some will fail, some will work, and those ones that work start to spread and become a norm in society. So it's pretty neat. I would also suggest that there's a lot of literature, not only in international relations, about this sort of thing. In epidemiology, of course, about contagion, but also the spread of policies in the U.S. after one state or a couple states have real good success with one. This happens in fashion, right? It happens in language. So people who study etymology, the creation and history of words kind of use this same idea. We find that war also can spread like this through contagion. So yeah, interesting stuff. But there's a lot of different sort of branches out there if this stuff interests you. All right, that's it. The next one's going to be really short too. So thanks for being here.